publication of independent political and economic news analysis by the economist Jargal. Our gazette is published in Mongolian, English, Japanese, and Russian. Please order your subscription online at www.jargaldefacto.com or from the post office called Mongol Shudan near you. Also, you can order by phone at 7007 8916.
One is the fund of future.
Good evening. You're watching Defacto review on MNB World, and we are today here with our economist and commentator, Mr. Jargal Defacto.
Good evening.
You can join in on our conversation on MNB World Facebook page and on Twitter with hashtag Jargal_Defacto. Now let's take a look at the topics for today. Will foreign banks enter the Mongolian market? Now let's get into our first topic. Mongolia made an announcement on Friday presenting the government's measures to recover from the impact of COVID-19 on the Mongolian economy. He presented 7 measures that will be taken for a short and long-term recovery. So let's get into our questions. Could you tell us about the decisions made by the government about the COVID-19 impact on the economy?
Well, we talked last week about coronavirus is becoming econovirus, and the country had proposed certain monetary policy easing last week. We talked about that. They were decreasing certain policy interest rate, required reserve interest rate, etc. But this week, or matter of fact, 2 days ago, the Prime Minister suggested new fiscal measures, including for next 6 months, beginning from the April 1st to October 1st, there will be no social insurance payments by companies. For 6 months, and also there will be no payment for personal income tax, which is coming from the salary. And the third, the companies which have turnover under 1.5 trillion tugrik, billion tugrik sales, will be also tax exempted from corporate tax income, exempted. It will not cover companies, mining companies, fuel importing companies, or liquor producing companies, etc. So for certain categories of companies, it don't work. Another interesting measure, which was, I think, the main focus of this policy, is not to lose any more jobs. That's why the government will pay for workers suffering from the coronaviruses, businesses, only if the company is not paying, or no, if the company is freeing or firing or half releasing workers, each employee will be paid for next 3 months, 200,000 tugrov per month. And the next measure was about giving a loan to Kashmir buyers. It is 300 billion tugriks that helps 273,000 herders' family to survive by selling their Kashmir at least at the level of 100,000 tugrov per kilo. The last one is children's money, which is 20,000 tugrov per child per month. Now will be for next 3 months 30,000, or increased by 10,000. That's the very short brief of that fiscal measurement from the government side announced by the Prime Minister Khureshukh. And I think this one is main focus is again not to lose more jobs, which is important.
So in our previous reviews, you've noted that reducing the monetary policy rate will not have much more significant effect on the economy. So what do you think of these 7 measures? How will these affect the economy?
The issue is, first of all, for covering all this government fiscal measures, the government will need around 5 trillion tugriks. And those money would come, not very clear, but first of all, they will try to get from the Future Heritage Fund, which has 620 billion tugriks as a reserve, which is not enough for current budget deficit without even amendments. And the things are becoming worse, in particular after the making all pension loans paid by the government. 773 billion tugriks were given to commercial banks by the development bank against the bond of a company that's going to produce copper in the Dondra. So it was the bond of the company which have not yet produced, which haven't even started. So it's another not very clear, smart step. The Prime Minister said that the government is not going to change, at least today, the budget. No amendments, though it has our own deficit, but the Prime Minister said any budget investment, we talk about the building schools, kindergartens that needed for the country. We need more kindergartens every year. We have more than 50,000 children, new children in the country. So, and on the other side, these are also a jobs issue, because those who will make those buildings have also employees. However, the country could have more reserve if we have been fighting properly with the corruption, because according to the anti-corruption agency, the loss of corruption, due to corruption, we have lost almost the annual budget revenue income, or around 12 trillion tugriks loss, and the country somehow, they don't talk about the getting back those money. Positive news is, first, the gold reserve is keep increasing. Central bank is buying more gold than last year. Maybe it's because also due to the closure of the border, through which looks like have been losing a lot physical gold. Now they are giving to the central bank. They are buying more gold than before, and the currency reserve of the country staying there at 4.5 billion. So we should say also some countries are already helping Mongolia. U.S. government had donated $1.2 million to combat coronavirus effect in Mongolia. A French company called Orano Mining donated $1 billion to growth, some $370,000 also, and private individuals, companies, they do. And also happy to note that Chinese living in Mongolia also giving some 100+ million to grow to Mongolian government, etc. So people try, and the private companies as well. But I got interesting request by people that to ask particular those companies who is made during socialist time, which was privatized to individuals. The expectation from them is more, and we appeal them to participate more in this fight against coronaviruses. So we need more and more fight with corruption. Unfortunately, no cases now discussed at the court. Somehow they keep postponing the court against big scandalous corruption cases, and the feeling is the actors are changed, but the play is going on with the same their roles. So we need to fight more with the corruption at this time to get back more money that we have lost due to corruption.
So will these 7 measures implemented by the government cause inflation?
See, coronavirus is pushing forward down the supply and demand in the world. And because we cannot stop it, and because many people have losing jobs or staying at home, that means also less demand and accordingly less supply. So that's why in these conditions, I think what government does or trying to take measures will not much affect in terms of inflation. But however, the pension fund payments by the government the expectation is may raise inflation for 1%. Let's see exactly what's going to happen, but it was a lot of money pushed put into the circle in the economy one day.
So there will be no taxes due until tomorrow, as you mentioned. So where will next year's budget come from if we are not paying taxes for several months?
Well, that's the issue. Most probably the deficit, which will increase anyway with amendments or without, will be increased. We need to ask probably foreign development institutions like ADB, maybe World Bank, maybe IMF, because the situation is a little bit better now. We have more reserve, more budget discipline than before, except some few cases like this pension, loan, payment, etc. So hopefully there will be anyway payment deficit. The issue is how smaller we can keep them.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now let's get into our second topic. Several measures have been taken by the Bank of Mongolia to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on the economy. They reduced the monetary policy interest rate by 1% and the reserve requirement ratio for commercial banks by 2%. Additionally, they announced that loan repayment and interest accrual would be deferred for several months. However, people reported that the banks are not implementing this measure, and because of these reports, Speaker of Parliament Zander Shatter spoke with the bank authorities. Right now, the public is also discussing about allowing foreign banks to enter the Mongolian economy. So our first question about this one is, could you tell us if the commercial banks have to follow the decisions and measures made by the Mongol Bank? And why is Mongol Bank is making such decisions if they are not enforcing the implementation?
Well, we talk about not only this reduction of the policy rates or reserve rates, etc. Here we talk about the consumer loan payment postponement for 6 months. But that statement was very vague from the government side, from Bank of Mongolia, because it has not direct to do with the people who have a credit loan to pay. So the idea was to have, because if the payment is not paid for 6 months, it has a different category of risk and different level of fund against that risk. And that was only the classification issue. It did not necessarily obliging the people being okay not paying for 6 months the loan. So from the beginning it was that much vague, and government, according to our law, cannot order central bank, which is independent organ, and central bank cannot order commercial banks to forgive the loan for 6 months or give bank holidays. It only says if you give or if that person cannot pay, you can keep the category of quality of classification of the loan in this same old manner, like if it had nothing happened. That was the vague decisions. Now what they do is people misunderstood in many cases, and they think that they can also not pay 6 months their credit, which is not true. When I visited last week, these days, some website of commercial banks, it says, if you want to change the conditions of the loan due to coronavirus cases, as it was suggested by a central bank, push here, click here, then you will receive your loan, all this information where you put, and then your loan is, basically you are rewriting or renegotiating the contract. So that's why the result was not feasible or immediately seen in the economy, felt in the economy. So that's why the Speaker of the country had met the CEOs of commercial banks 2 days ago, but the result was nothing because the commercial banks asked 600 billion tugriks subsidy from the bank, from the government, which has their own problem with their own other measures they need to take against the coronavirus. So the meeting was without result.
So there's been a lot of talks whether or not to allow foreign banks to enter Mongolian economy. While some say that this will add competition and lower interest rates, while others suggest that Mongolian banks cannot compete with these foreign banks and just go bankrupt, which will threaten the national security. So what do you make of this?
Prime Minister said one interesting note. He said, I will ask further central bank to decrease the interest rate, which is 10% now. From 11 they made to 10 now. He is asking further. And secondly, he said that we need a banking reform in the country, and we will talk seriously about that. That was the major comment he made in the address to the public 2 days ago, where he was announcing that fiscal measures. What does it mean? Recently in social media, we have been receiving or seeing the name of politicians, parliament members with very high savings, from 100 to several hundred millions to billions, several billions. And interest rates they receive every year, because the total interest rate in the country is around 12 to 14% per year. And if you have 1 billion to grow, that is substantial money that you don't need to even work. So that list came out with the particular names, because in this country, the parliament members, politicians, they must report their personal income. So based on that, those lists come first. That disturbed the people and get people understanding why our decision makers are reluctant to reduce saving credit interest rate, which comes from the saving interest rate. Second, also social media information it turned out many politicians, parliament members, people related to Mongol Bank and the ex-officers of Mongol Bank leaders have owned non-bank financial institutions which borrow money with twice more interest rate than commercial banks. So people are saying now there is no surprise why Mongolia has such a high business loan interest rate, because these people who make decisions are interested to keep saving rates so high. So people suggested it's a high time to open the door to commercial banks. It will be ideally good if it is not state-owned banks. If it is normal Western commercial bank which has a public interests owned by public, that will be ideal. Though now there is not a big queue to come to Mongolia, because what is the business that the Western commercial banks would be interested in Mongolia? It's only mining. And in the mining, we have a lot of problem because the policy is not stable. The locals are now against mining in many cases because they were not paid a royalty share they're supposed to have for years. So people have certain anti-sentiment against the mining, which is fueled by the politicians before in particular elections. So if we are keeping that the most interested sector for foreign direct investment in such a conditions, by the way, we closed the Inimo exploration. All this together does not make foreign commercial banks dying to come to Mongolia. So there are this kind of situation. We wish more foreign banks come to the country.
So even if a foreign bank starts operating in Mongolia, does the current macroeconomic situation of Mongolia allow low-interest loans?
Unfortunately, not, due to reason just now explained about the not stable conditions of foreign direct investment, one. Secondly, not very clear free competition conditions in the country. Our commercial banks are everywhere. The owners of commercial banks own almost everything. It's even better to call or name all the businesses they are not in. So we are becoming serving these commercial few banks who owns every business in the country. So with the foreign bank, this kind of management will be changed. And then because it's a large foreign bank, the money will be cheaper, and certainly they will decrease our loan rate. And I think it is a good chance for Mongolian commercial banks to make more clean their assets, the lists, and more clean, more, this up to now even. So according to IMF requirement, Mongolian commercial banks should increase their equity capital according to the international standard, which is not the case. And we don't know yet whether they have done or not. That's what I'm expecting to know from the new governor of the central bank. So this kind of things to be made to have substantial influence by commercial bank to the country economy.
So can Mongolian commercial banks compete with these foreign banks? And will this affect national security, as some people are saying?
I think it will help Mongolians to have a better, vibrant commercial banking system in the country, because there will be more healthy competition, not like now where banks are so much connected with the politicians through elections. Now they will be competing now with financing political campaign of those candidates for deputies. So certainly we need that clear, healthy, normal competition.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now let's get into our third topic. The president of Mongolia made an announcement for the Mongolian people on Wednesday. He urged people to take actions and take the threat of COVID-19 seriously. He proposed 6 measures, 5 of which were praised by the public, and however, one of them was about centralizing the government power, which caused lots of controversy around the politics. So our first question about this is that you two have said that 5 of them were actually good, but you heavily criticized the one about the centralized power. And before this, there's been a number of statements made by the president that suggests the centralization of power to him. So what should the Mongolian people know in this situation?
Well, I was writing an article called Feast in a Time of Plague. As I finished that, suggesting we need to postpone the election because the coronavirus by the end of June, not clear what will be in shape in Mongolia or around the world, because just last night for 24 hours, 832 persons died in Spain. So all around the country, people are dying, their tragedy, funerals, then we do elections and all this. Our political parties are putting Mongolian political power at auction, promising all the things, including all birds in the sky. So it looks very comic. So that's why I suggested in that article to postpone the election. And President Dad also suggested that. I agree with that. But however, I don't agree with his proposal to concentrate power in one. So that's his 6th proposal out of 5. And that sounds very dangerous for us, because Mongolia is a parliamentarian system, parliamentarian country, where many people make decisions, unlike many countries, including our neighbors, where one guy is making decisions. So this is the basis of our democracy, where we don't want to see all power in one hand, whoever he is or she is. So that's why I immediately wrote that article called also, I added new title, Mongolian Maduro, though it sounds more stronger, but really that's what the people don't want in this country. And we actually think the whole independence, power of our future of the country depends on that system, parliamentarian democracy. That's why we oppose on one side. On the other side, recently our president is doing something that prime minister should do, economics, homework. For example, he's starting be in charge of constructing railways or satellite city or betterment of bettering the renovation of one Sum Khalkhot in the east part of the country on the money given by Russian state-owned company Rosneft, $10 million. And we want to see this report, what is done, what is done on this money given to Mongolia. It's given to the president. Actually, it should supposedly to be through only executive power with the cabinet. So we don't want to see our president doing so many company works, and because it's dangerous. So we want to have one power in the country, not two or in one hand.
As you mentioned, he proposed postponing the 2020 election. However, the Prime Minister himself said that there is no need to do so. So how would postponing the election impact politics and the economy? And why is the Prime Minister saying this will not be postponed?
Election by law in this country is postponed only in the case of emergency announced in the country. Then the power shifts to the president. That's what our law says. And we don't want to have that emergency. That's why Mongolia is trying its best to have the best against this coronavirus situation. And only so far 11 persons are sick. And we know all coronavirus cases are imported, and we control each plane because the rest is closed, only charter flights. So I think the executive power is doing their best, and so far not so bad. And in that case, thinking even about the concentrating of power in one hand due to election, etc., it doesn't work. Because once it is an emergency case, remember Maduro announced economic emergency case. Then he stopped the legal parliament. Then soon after created own parliament. Now this country has two parliaments and one president, and the country with the richest oil reserve is now they have most criminals killing each other, robbing. So we should be avoiding all this kind of possible future scenarios like this. So election, if your Prime Minister said we will not change, but if you really think situations are coming, we need to postpone the election for 3 months or so. We hope by the beginning of fourth quarter things will be better and the schools will be normal, working, functioning. Then 3 months delay is not that danger, I think. So, but we will see today. President thinks we need to postpone the election. Prime Minister said we have not yet that situation of postponing. And of course, we'll see after a month or so. And I hope it will be a normal situation in the country, and hope everything will be on time and by law. And on the way, we selected 19 in 1990.
So if it is postponed, how will it affect the politics and economy?
Well, if it is postponed, it will be due to very severe situations. That means economic could be now. If it is today, the growth is slowing down. Maybe if it comes to more worse situation, then it's already bad. Then we need to borrow more money again. So situation will be not very good because we will have more cost because it is becoming worse.
Okay, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we had for today. We will see you next week with more topics. Have a nice evening.
One is the fund of future.